Welcome everyone to OnPodcast, the On Microsoft podcast, where we talk about Microsoft stuff on a podcast. I'm your co-host today. I'm joined by Kareem Anderson, and I'm joined by the world's greatest co-host.
Arif Bacchus.
And we have a special guest today. We
Yeah, we
have.
yeah, go
Go ahead.
ahead. You
Oh,
introduce him.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm Richard
Yeah.
Hay. Yeah, Richard Hay. One
How you
normal.
doing? Yeah, you're formerly, or I mean, are you currently Window Observer still, or is that like?
Oh yeah, no. WindowsObserver.com is still there. WinOBS on Twitter is still there. All that has remained the same. Yeah, my personal identity is still out there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And for anybody who is new to our podcast, we had Richard on last year as a Microsoft MVP. Basically, he
Yep.
was a partner with Microsoft officially, and he kind of walked us through the whole program itself, and it was very informative. So we suggest you go and check that podcast out because we're going to be kind of leapfrogging from there to our new perspective, which is Richard as an official employee of Microsoft. That's why we're having him back. I mean, we wanted to have him back throughout the year, but things just kind of didn't work out. But we are having him back to kind of, say hello, reacquaint us with what he's been doing lately, and just kind of pick his brain for what we can legally about the Microsoft process.
Yeah, we'll just run through a couple of questions with Richard today about his experience as jumping from Microsoft MVP to actual Microsoft employee. He's going to be free to talk about his new role and his work that he does at Microsoft. One thing about stuff that he likes doing in Microsoft. He'll also be able to talk about free swag and the stuff that he gets as a Microsoft employee and some of the stuff that relates to his job. So I'll let you get started, Kareem, with your first question for Richard.
First question: when is Windows Phone coming back? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, oh, right.
Just kidding.
Yeah. Sure.
No,
That's the first thing I'm going to do in my first official appearance as a Microsoft employee.
No, honestly, though, we were going to ask, now that you've already been a Microsoft MVP, but how did you get noticed about from Microsoft? Because we know that the MVP program is referral, essentially. So was this a similar situation?
I'll say yes and no. I was a Microsoft MVP for 12 years. So since 2010 was when I first was awarded, 2009. It wasn't Microsoft that came to me. I will say, well, technically, a good friend of mine who I've known for years through social media, and a fellow MVP, Harjit Diwali, had joined Microsoft earlier last year. And in the middle of August, I get this direct message from him on Twitter, and he says, "Man, you ought to apply for this role." And he sends me a link to the job description for the job I'm in. I'm like, I don't know, man. They want 3 years as a community manager. I've never done community management. I know community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things you often see people say when it comes to applying for a position, don't let the qualifications keep you from applying, right? They can't say no if you don't apply, right? The answer is definitely a no. So on his behest in mid-August, a couple days later, I submitted my application for this position. So the connection in the MVP program was what got the prompt to me to apply for this specific position.
And for anybody else who's out there listening, he also put in 12 years, folks. So don't go running out right now applying and saying, "Oh, Richard did it. Why can't I do it in 3 months?" So
hey, you never know, though. You never know.
True.
But
True. I'm
good
just saying.
Yeah.
I don't want you to get some nasty Twitter responses. I want people to know that you've been working hard with them, alongside them, and this is just, I think, an official recognition of.
I would say it most definitely impacted my selection because of that experience. Because again, in 12 years, you learn a lot about the company. You learn a lot of connections throughout the company, not just within the MVP program. So that's
Correct.
probably what was beneficial as well. Was a good mark. I still had to go through interview process and all that. And we could talk about that, but yeah, it's not an automatic just because you got MVP on your resume that you're going to get hired per se.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll let Arif ask the next question.
All right.
Second question is, you are a community manager for Microsoft Q&A, but what is Microsoft Q&A and what does your role entail? Obviously, you're not like Panos Panay, you're not in charge of hardware or software, but Q&A seems very important. So what exactly do you do in your role at Microsoft?
Yeah. Panos is in a whole nother organization, so we're not even in the same organization. Microsoft Q&A, fairly young platform, couple years old since it launched. And it is a place where customers can come and ask technical issue questions. So if they're having a problem with any product or service that we cover on Q&A, and we cover 16 product categories, product groups on Q&A itself, and everything's divvied up by tags, right? Each service or product has a tag. So people can come there and say, hey, I'm having a problem with XYZ. How do I resolve this? They provide details about what's going on and what the challenges are. And then we have members of Q&A that are just members that browse Q&A. We have identified MVPs that are on Q&A answering and helping with questions. And we have what we call, Azure runs a program called Community Champions. Azure was our first product group that really started. They were kind of the first group to get involved in Q&A. And so they set the standards that we're going to use a lot of what they're doing to expand the program. But so people come there, ask a question, and the goal is to avoid them having to call a support call, which costs the company money when they have to call for support. So our goal is to deflect those calls, those support requests. And not only do we have all those volunteers I mentioned, but there are Microsoft engineers in there answering questions. There are Microsoft product group people that are program managers or others that are in there helping out as well. So it's like MSD and TechNet forums.
Yeah.
But it's not a forum per se. It's a place to come ask a question, get an answer. Comments are possible, but the comments are intended to kind of clarify the issue and the question to resolve to an answer.
Yeah. So is it mainly a consumer in IT admin thing, or is it all consumer?
On professional, developer, IT pro, that enterprise type folks. If somebody comes into the Windows 11 tag and asks a question and they happen to be a consumer, we're not going to check their consumer card, right? We're not going to say, wait a minute, are you a consumer asking this? No, we're going to try to help them out if we can. We have other platforms that do help with the consumer aspect. For instance, Answers. Answers is a huge forum that's built for consumers to come in, but that doesn't mean that IT pros and devs don't go into Answers to ask questions too. So we're part of a bigger kind of conglomeration of resources to help people get answers to their challenges.
That's awesome. I was going to ask.
And my role, right? My role is I work with the community members, and I work with our internal partners, our internal product teams, to kind of bring everybody together into Q&A to kind of build that synergy to help people.
So a lot of Teams meetings?
Oh yeah, Teams is the way to meet, right? My team, one unique thing about Microsoft Q&A is the team is 100% remote, has been from day one. So, you know, we got folks up in the Northwest, we got some folks in California, Texas, I'm in Florida, we've got somebody up the East Coast. So we got a pretty good spread.
Oh, that's good. It's great to hear. Yeah, I know, because you're about 3 hours from me, and I'm trying to think of the closest Microsoft office to you. And I don't know if
they have a sales office here in Jacksonville, and there's some sales and other offices in Tampa. The big Southeast campus is up in Atlanta.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask my question, which is, how was the transition from MVP to Microsoft employee? Because I know that there were entirely different things, and there are certain things that you can do and know and say and kind of interact with as an MVP, and that kind of gets flipped if you become like a contractor or some other interaction with Microsoft that's in a more employee sort of way. So I don't know if you had to they were like, all right, you can't do these things anymore, or you can do these things but only with limited capacity.
Right. I go back to what I said before. The one value the MVP program brought me as I joined Microsoft as an employee is the connections I built, the relationships I built, because those don't go away. So if I knew somebody in a product group or on a team and I happen to be needing to talk to somebody on that team, I'm going to reach out to them. Might not be them who I eventually end up talking to, but they are my resource to find that person. And one of the really awesome things I've noticed about Microsoft since I joined is it's really a cross organization communication scheme. I don't see any silos in my experience, right? We talk across teams, we partner with other teams. And so it's a communications that just goes across the board I think that was probably my biggest surprise coming in. Because when you're an MVP, you kind of communicate through the MVP channels,
Right.
the MVP team, and that's kind of it. You guys know the interactions on social media, right? So if you're a Windows Insider, you're communicating with members of the Insider team, but it's about the Insider stuff, right? So coming inside the company, those relationships have really proven fruitful for me to be able to reach out. And if I wanted to talk about accessibility, Donna Sakar now runs that team on accessibility. If I wanted to talk about Teams, Stephen Rose works on the Teams team. So I got folks a little bit of everywhere that I've been able to reach out and use as resources. So that's probably the biggest plus in the transition. And I got to tell you, it's just weird suddenly being on the inside after being on the outside looking in all these years. So the familiarity aspect was there because, again, I've been interacting with Microsoft for more than 25 years, 12 as an MVP. But, to come inside the company and suddenly be a Teams chat away from somebody, that you've been watching from the outside forever is kind of weird. It's really strange. You get used to it, slowly adapt and things like that. But the reception has been tremendous. You guys probably saw the reaction on Twitter when I announced back in October that I was joining. It was extremely positive, a lot of support for that. And then once I got inside, I had folks lined up on Teams with one-liners just saying, welcome, we're glad to have you, that kind of stuff. So it really is a welcoming experience.
That's awesome.
And that brings us to our fourth question, which is, what is one unknown thing about being a Microsoft employee that you could speak to?
Well, I will tell you this, I have no idea what the Windows team is doing. I work for Microsoft, but I have no idea what the Windows team is doing. So I do self-host. So we have the ability as employees to self-host internal builds. And I do that on my Surface Book 3 as a test device, right? And I've got all my work stuff on there. I can do email, I can do Teams, so I can sit on that device and put it through its paces through new builds. But I have no idea what's new in that build. When they announce an insider build to the external, there's a nice blog post that goes along, and that's fine. Our intent is to just continue to use the OS and experience it. So yeah, that's, there are not these really cool little repositories where you can go suddenly look at what one team's doing or another team is doing. And that was kind of weird. I was like, well, I should be able to find out what's going on, but not so much. And I don't think that's intended as a detriment. I just think with the size of a company like Microsoft, if folks are on doing their thing and they're just, day in, day out doing what they do, and it's just part of the existence. People don't know what we do on Microsoft Q&A every day and what we're working on, what we're dealing with. So I wouldn't call those silos, though. It's just the way the kind of things are divvied up and where you pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they're just like any other multi-billion-dollar company. They are businesses within businesses.
Yep.
And doesn't mean that they are, as you said, siloed. They're just focused on something else. So if you're in Azure and you're stuck doing, server, and you're talking to the engineers for chips and APIs and things like that, you're not necessarily looking over to Q&A to be like, all right, what questions are we getting today? More, and maybe there's a communications person that is the bridge, but you don't know who that person is. That's just someone who has an assignment to keep traffic going where they need to go.
Exactly. And you can reach out to people and talk to them. And again, I think that's probably an external perception that people have, that every Microsoft employee knows about everything happening within Microsoft. And I said, I guess that's the myth I'll bust. That's
so they're not an SMB. They're not the small business that we think they are.
What's that?
They're not the small business we think they are.
Oh, no. I mean, like you said, business within business, but it's true though. I mean, I will share stuff on Twitter. And now, because Microsoft employees in my Twitter bio, people will ask you a question about something 180 degrees out. And so it's just, you have to explain, that's not on my team, I don't know, or something like that. You don't ever speak for another product team, if you're not on the team. But I think that's probably the biggest misperception, is that people think you're an employee, so you must know, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well, here's a fun one. We saw you got a new backpack. We were also wondering, did they do anything else? I know that, when we go to like conferences and things like that, they love to give out stuff like socks and stickers and patches and things like that. Do you get anything like that as an employee, like the first
Well,
day or
you
first month?
saw my new employee backpack, right? They send all new employees, but they asked us shortly after we joined to send an email, and they shipped it to us. My own organization team, my organization is called Content and Learning. So Cloud AI, Scott Guthrie, and then you come down the chain, a few people, managers and CVPs, and then you land my manager and our team. And Content and Learning is kind of our leader on the scene, on that leadership team. And I got a really cool beanie, and a couple other little pieces of stuff. But it's not this swag fest that everybody thinks it is when you join Microsoft. And oh, by the way, I've had to buy my own Microsoft logo polos. In fact, they're
Oh,
arriving
okay.
today from the company store. And so yes, it's not an automatic that Ignite, right, where you walk around the show floor and you scoop up a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, I don't know, maybe if you're on campus and you might be able to move around building to building and put your hands on a few bits and bobs, but yeah, for the now, they did take good care of me from the perspective of work equipment. As I started to get ready to come on board, they shipped me a laptop, a dock, a 27-inch monitor,
Oh, wow.
a mouse, keyboard, a headset. So they sent me all the tools I would need to be productive from remote. And so no complaints there. I mean, great device and doing all that. So they do make sure you've got the equipment you need to do your job to communicate, because of course Teams is the
Yeah.
medium. Teams is everything for us, whether it be one-on-one, kind of an async conversation with somebody who's on another side of the world, or your teammate who's 3 hours behind you, or they're in Europe. So I mean, you work with people everywhere in Eastern Asia. We just have people. It is truly a global company in that sense. So you might end up communicating with somebody in India and Shanghai and Japan all in the same day. And again, you get used to the idea where you drop a message in Teams and you just don't say, hey. You say, hey, this is Rich. I got a question for you. Here's my question. That way, in the time difference, they can answer the question you asked. You're not waiting for them to come back and just say, hey, now you're 24 hours later still trying. So you
Right.
learn how to communicate on a global perspective for sure.
I had to learn that when I worked at Disney. I worked in their legal department, but I had an office in Glendale. So when I would come in the morning, like 8 o'clock, I am answering questions
The
from
East
our
Coast
London
is going to wait
office.
for 3 hours, right?
Yeah. And then I would be leaving questions as I left for our Japan office. So, it was
Yep.
constant, like you jump in, you try check
Around the
communication.
world. Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And
What's
that
your
brings
next
us
question?
to our
Mhm.
next question, which is, what is it like being a Microsoft fan and a Microsoft employee at the same time? For some Microsoft fans out there, it would be a dream to work for Microsoft. So, is it a dream for you to
Oh,
be
and
working at
absolutely.
Microsoft?
Absolutely. One, I wasn't in the market. I was quite happy with what I was doing. And when this opportunity popped up, I didn't think much about it when I initially applied. And I was like, well, who knows. I did take advantage of the relationships I've made within Microsoft, and I asked a handful of people to send emails to the hiring manager for the position on my behalf, because we'd worked together. We've had relationships for multiple years. And they did that. And, my hiring manager later told me that, it's not uncommon for somebody to be recommended to a position. So we have the ability in the Microsoft Careers website, when we log in as an employee, to directly refer somebody to a position. So you send their resume, you send their name, you send their info, and they get queued up, and they get a special mark in the system that says they were recommended. It's no more than that. It's just a referral for the most part. And so all these emails came from these folks, and that helped break the ice for me to at least get a phone interview. And then at the phone interview that allowed me to make the cut to make a interview loop, what Microsoft calls the interview loop. Now, I didn't have a technical interview because I'm not fulfilling a dev role or a tech role, engineering role, although I'm in engineering. And so I had 4 1-hour interviews with different program managers or managers in the organization. So in the course of one day, I started at I think my first one was at 11 a.m. and I had a gap, and then from 12 to 1, 1 to 2, and then 6 to 7 was my day of my interviews.
Wow.
And again, if you're doing technical interviews, as I understand it, you get another bout of those things when you go technical. But yeah, so again, that's where the MVP program, I wasn't an MVP because of that, but that relationships and those relationships gave me the opportunity to kind of get some extra nods in with the hiring manager.
Well, that's gonna lead me to my next question. And like, again, I'll refer to my work at Disney because I feel like it's hierarchical in that sort of sense.
Mm-hmm.
When I worked there, I always, had ideas that I'd reach out to Bob Iger at the time. We were going to ask you, do you ever feel like you would like to reach out to Satya, Panos, or Scott? I mean, because I know he's sort of actually within your
Well, Scott Guthrie is our executive
right.
VP in our organization. Yeah.
But I don't know how communications work with that. Like, usually they'll have like people that you go through filter before you get to the communications with them directly. So we were wondering, are you close to doing that? Could you, or do you want to do that for any of
I'm
the
not. I'm
executives?
sure. I'm sure all the senior level executives have somebody who manages their inbox. This is not untypical of any
Right,
large
exactly.
Right.
organization. And I mean, even when I was in the Navy, my commanding officer had somebody that kind of monitored email for them to a certain extent. We do have lots of opportunity to interact with our leadership. So from my first level manager, so my manager, my skip manager, who is his manager, our leader above him, all going on up to our corporate VP, on up to our executive VP, and then of course Satya is at the top. We have lots of opportunity to hear from them, town halls and other kind of sessions that we get to hear about what's going on in the company from their viewpoint. Our the person in our organization who's below our corporate VP has what is called a listening tour. And so they just connect with employees, including new employees, and connect and talk about the organization and listens to feedback. And so it's an organization that's built for internal feedback. That has really impressed me as well. So, and it's all managed at the right level. Would I email Satya directly to ask a question or something? No, of course not. I mean, I'm an old military guy. I had 30 years in the Navy. I still have to get used to this idea about chain of command, right? I still approach things with that mindset, although it's not the way Microsoft approaches things. But if I look at Satya like the commanding admiral of the fleet, he is not my first point of communications. My leader
Right.
is, and it kind of works up
Exactly.
that way. So could I? They're in the global. I could probably email them directly. I probably could. Would I? Probably not.
Fair enough.
And speaking about emails, you just mentioned that Microsoft sent you equipment for your work, like
Yeah.
monitors and also headsets and even keyboards and mice. So, what is
Yeah.
it like working remotely at a company like Microsoft during a pandemic? And would you ever be able to go into a physical Microsoft office?
Uh, I think I could. We have a local sales office here in Jacksonville, and like I said, there's offices in Tampa, and there's a big campus up in Atlanta. So and then of course, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to travel back to Redmond
Right.
as an employee. One, I've been on campus many times as an MVP, but I'm really looking forward to being able to visit campus as an employee. Our organization, DevRel, has an annual conference called Camp Conference. It's an internal conference where we get to hear from our people on the team and coworkers about what they're working on. It's got a career track, a professional track, a technical track. It's got kind of a relax and take it easy track. So it's a lot of great content and information to just kind of detach. And we have a hackathon, Fix, Hack, and Learn hackathon.
Yep.
And so it's 4 days to be able to just kind of disconnect from the normal routine and kind of recharge and do that stuff. And it was a great conference. It was my first, but it's the second one they've done remote and virtual. Normally it would be something that folks would go to Redmond and participate in person. So I'm hoping that happens next year. So yeah, there is a procedure because of COVID. There are procedures in place, and we have an app that we can download from our phones called My Hub that allows us to interact with different aspects. We can see our pay, we can see our leave, we can see all that kind of stuff. And there's actually a process to go physically to an office. So and it's a COVID app. You got to answer certain questions about your health, things like that. So yeah, there is a method in place. Working remotely, guys, you know this. The
Yeah.
software is built for it.
Yep.
I mean, I came from a company who had started using Office 365 about 3 years ago. Previously, we were using Slack, Google, and other tools like that. So I was working remote even before the pandemic. And like I said, even before the pandemic, my team that I'm on now was fully remote, and there's no plan for that to change. So I think it's really proven. So the remote tools are there, right? Teams, granted, you miss out on some of the hallway interactions and stop by somebody's office for a quick chat. But I do that on Teams, which is okay. I have a lot of one-on-one syncs with my team members to kind of connect. I meet with my manager once a week for a half an hour just to catch up and see what's going on. I meet with the primary program manager once a week so we can share notes and make sure we're tracking in the same direction. And any other member of my team that I want to be able to sync with, all I got to do is reach out and schedule it. So there's plenty of opportunity for interaction on a daily basis. And I don't think, while remote makes it different, I don't think it impacts. I love the people touch, right? You love the idea of being able to just walk down the hall. And again, especially as a Microsoft fan who's suddenly a Microsoft employee, I love having hung out in some of those buildings and walk by offices and go, oh man, that's cool. Oh man, that's cool. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
see a whiteboard out in the lobby area where they've been brainstorming some idea with their product or service. I love the idea of being able to do that. But if my job is remote, it's remote. I mean, the reality is the pandemic, and Microsoft was already on a track for this, I think, building the tools that help with being remote. And so Teams, like we're on right now, is a bailiwick. That is kind of the core communications platform. I probably do more on Teams than I do in email by far.
I can see that.
All right, I
Yep.
could see that too. Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
mean,
I'd love to get on campus, no doubt about that, and I'm sure I'll get a chance. But working remote's not a bad thing. I like the commute.
that's great. Last question then. Kind of dovetailing into this. What kind of tech were you, specifically given to work with? Were you greeted with any service devices, any of the Microsoft modern tool like the headphones or anything like that, mouses, mouse pads, stuff like that?
Yeah, no, my keyboard and mouse was a Microsoft. I think it was called the Microsoft Curve.
The
The
ergonomic one,
Sculpt,
Yeah,
the
the
Sculpt,
ergonomic.
the Sculpt
sculpt. Yeah.
keyboard
Yeah.
and mouse. Right, that's what they sent me for that. They sent me a ThinkPad X1 Gen
Ooh,
6
nice.
laptop,
Oh, nice.
32 gig of RAM, 1 terabyte hard drive. So a really nice spec laptop that I don't open at all. It's in a dock, so I have it on the desk, but it's connected to a ThinkPad dock. So I have all of my peripherals wired in there.
Was
I
it a
did
Kensington?
have a 27-inch monitor myself that was a spare. So I'm working in dual monitor setup. They did send me one ThinkPad monitor to go with the setup, but I did set up a dual because I prefer the dual screen kind of life or widescreen. So it was a great set of kit. It really was, very functional, very capable. I'm making a personal trip next month, and I'm going to work a couple of days on that trip, so I'm taking it with me. So you grab the laptop, you go. They sent us a Jabra headset, so a
Oh,
little
Okay.
more
nice.
office style as opposed to. I mean, I have my Surface headphones here that are still in the box, my spare pair that I bought when they were on sale on eBay, and I still have my day-to-day set. So
That's awesome.
and it's great, but they certainly give you the resources you need to do the job, no doubt.
I mean, it'd be astonishing if they were like, "Here's a Chromebook, and we'll see you at the meeting."
Yeah. The
Uh,
I guess in my brain I was kind of thinking Surface, but they have a broad list of stuff. And again, our business manager, so that the person who runs the business office for our organization took care of all this. Once I got my confirmed join date, that kind of started the ball rolling with that kind of. And we can. I know you're on your last question, but we can talk a little bit about how that kind of time went
Yeah, of
from
course.
yeah,
application
go
to
ahead.
hire.
Yeah.
They were the ones that reached out and said, all right, now we can start doing all these things because, so we'll start. So back in mid-August, applied for the job. That within a couple of weeks, I think I had the phone interview, and then I was set up for the loop, which I described 4 different 1-hour interviews. So you go through the loop and then you wait, right? You're waiting for the hiring manager to come back to you and say, we're going to offer you the job or not. And at the time, the hiring manager who interviewed me third on that day just said to me, look, I'm about to go on vacation. I'm going to be gone about 10 days. So don't sweat that you're not hearing anything for a bit, right? Which was great. And so I kind of chilled and waited. He reached out to me on what was actually my birthday back in September and said, we're going to offer you the job. So I got the official offer that was a Thursday, got the official offer the following Monday through the careers website. The recruiter called me. We started talking and doing all the negotiation part, right, for compensation and all that kind of stuff. And then once we had that settled, you electronically sign your offer letter, right, through the Microsoft Careers website. Everything happens through the Careers website. Once you sign your offer, the next step is a background screen. Because I'm working with customer data, I have to have a specific background cloud screen. They call it cloud background screening. And so that takes, they estimate, about 10 days, working days. So that's 2 weeks. And you got to go to another website. A third party handles that for Microsoft. You go and you put in all your info. You provide them all your details of your history, your work history, et cetera, et cetera. And then they do the screen. Mine got done on day 10. So that's when I got a little notice that said, you're done, you're cleared. Microsoft HR then reached out to me and said, okay, Rich, we got your cloud screen. You're good to go. Pick a day to start work. And so then I had to figure out when was I going to tell my old job. And, I was going to take a couple weeks off and then join the new job. So sorted that out, picked October 25th as my start date, which, oh, by the way, was the 20th anniversary of Windows XP.
Perfect date to start.
Yep. So my join date was the 20th anniversary of Windows XP. And so in that interim period of a few weeks that we were kind of waiting for that day to roll around, I think that was on the 9th of October, we finalized that. And I told my old job, and that's when I went public with the news. And they can go to windowsobserver.com, and I've got like 5 blog posts that kind of chronicle the process. And I've had a couple people reach out because I was searching for those kind of things. I was like, what's it like to go on board with I was trying to find detail. And so it was really great. They take care of you. The business manager's in touch with you. They're arranging things. Things start to arrive via UPS or FedEx. I think they use FedEx. And you just get your gear. And then day one, you kind of show up for work. And because I was 3 hours ahead of my team, I got my credentials later that day. And then, a few weeks later, they send you your card, your badge, right? Which we don't use right now anyway, because we're not in buildings. But they get you rolling, and then you start what they call new employee orientation. So like anywhere new, you got to learn the ropes and learn the insides and outsides. And so that first 2, 3, 4 weeks was really focused on doing the initial training that you had to do, get familiar with my team, meet the individuals, meet with them one-on-one and talk to them, and just slowly but surely kind of crank up. And I'm still not fully 100% rolled up. I mean, I've been on board now. Let's see, what's today? Today's the 18th. So in a week, it'll be 4 months that I've been on board. So yeah, I'm still learning. There's a lot to learn about an organization like this. So, but it's been a blast. I can't complain. And if you'd have asked me last July, hey, Rich, do you think you might be with Microsoft in a few months? No way. Come on. And so in that sense, it was a great surprise to be offered the position. And I've learned from joining that Microsoft, they approach things with an inclusive attitude that I just never seen matched. Maybe when I was in the Navy, we had that kind of level of stuff. And so every bit of what I've done as an MVP, my experience in the Navy, my experience even at Best Buy selling computers, right, and being the Microsoft consultant there, has given me the skill sets around technology that are helping me now. So I definitely recommend anybody who's interested in joining Microsoft. First off, don't always let the requirements throw you off, right? If you don't meet 100% of them, still apply. Still throw your resume in the basket and see what happens. The Microsoft Careers website is terrific. You can go in there and there's all kinds of ways to look for different positions. And Microsoft has been looking more and more remote these days, especially around the pandemic. So that's expanded the talent pool. So Microsoft has come to realize that there's plenty of talent in other places if we're willing to be remote with it. I think it'll be interesting when everybody's getting back on campus. I know you guys saw the news that Microsoft announced 28 February that campus will reopen, and employees have got to work with their managers to figure out their working situation. And, it'll be interesting to see how that hybridness works, because right now most everybody's remote. my team 100% remote. We're always going to be remote, but we do interact with others who are in the buildings and stuff like that. So, but keep apply for the positions. I wasn't a community manager for 3 years, but I had community experience. So applying for that position, you just do it. You just got to, and just take the opportunity, because you got to get the foot in the door, right? Once the foot in the door, then you get to sit in front of that individual or the 4 individuals and kind of make your case for why you're the person, and you get to talk your own skill set.
Yeah, I mean, you have nothing to lose. It's like you
No,
didn't
not
even
at
have the
all. They
job.
can't. They definitely said no if you never applied.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, you got to apply to get the no.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I want to say firsthand, congratulations. I know I said it on Twitter, but as virtual as in person as we can get, congratulations. I think it's awesome and well deserved. And I wish all the best for you. And hopefully, we will be able to keep talking to you as you progress. And maybe you can come back and tell us more about what you learned over the years.
Sounds good. Appreciate it very much.
Yep.
Where can people find you now that you're
I'm
working?
still on Twitter, doing my thing on Twitter, although I have come to realize that I'm a little less active on Twitter. I find I don't comment on things around Microsoft as much as I might have when I was covering Microsoft. But I'm still at WinOBS. So at WinOBS on Twitter, WindowsObserver.com for the website. And again, I got to figure out where my blogging is going to I intend to continue to chronicle this experience, because I think that's a valuable resource for people. But I also want many employees at Microsoft do personal blogging and personal projects and stuff like that. So once I get to a point where I'm ready to kind of explore that kind of stuff, Windows Observer is going to continue to be that home. I mean, I've had that site since 1995.
Can't let go of
used to
that.
be another Windows 95 links and resources page on GeoCities. Now it's all on its own. And then on a personal perspective, I'm less than 4 months away from, God willing, my ordination as a permanent deacon in the Catholic Church.
Right. We'll talk about that.
Finishing up my formation on that, and I'm in my final months of formation with my fellow brothers, the other 6 guys. And so there's a lot going on both sides of the coin. But life is good. I mean, you can't complain when things are going well. Well, you can, but
I mean, yeah, it would ring hollow.
There you go. Exactly.
Well, again, thank you for your time. I hope you, again, all the best.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks again, Richard. See you again soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.